Welcome to the Creative Expression session, and really glad that you've joined us. I'm Steve Harper. I am a writer, actor, producer, and certified creativity coach dedicated to helping writers make their writing life more abundant, dedicated to helping actors become better writers or become writers in a dramatic sense. And you can find out more about me at yourcreativelife.com. So go there to check out more about who I am and what we do at Your Creative Life. So today, we are going to talk about agents and managers and whether you need one or not. And, this is one of the biggest questions that aspiring writers come to me with. They say, do I need an agent? Do I need a manager? And that's what we're here to talk about today. So, I asked myself this same question, do I need an agent? Do I need a manager, for years? And, I got all sorts of strange or actually not particularly helpful answers. People saying stuff like, well, you'll know when you need one, or, I never seemed to be able to tell definitively whether I needed one or not, and I found it incredibly frustrating. So then I got to the point, suddenly out of the blue, after getting years of this kind of advice, where I suddenly knew and figured out, oh, I think I need one now. and I knew that that was the next step. But here's the question, how did I know? What was the demarcation point? And how can you know for yourself, for your own writing career, wherever you are, whatever it is, how can you know whether or not that's the next step for you? So that's what we're going to talk about today. And there's an easy way, I think, to find out what the demarcation point is. And so I'm going to invite you then to take out a piece of paper and a pen. Hopefully you have one of those nearby, or both, piece of paper and a pen. And I want you to draw a line down the middle of the sheet of paper, right? So dividing it in two. Then on one side, I'm going to ask you, I'm going to speak some things that may or may not be true, and I want you to basically just put a check mark or a hash mark or a star or an X somewhere in that space if you think that it's true of you in terms of your career and your life. And then from there, we're going to talk a little bit more about what that means in terms of your potential for needing an agent or a manager. Okay, so you got your piece of paper, you've drawn a line down the middle, right? You've got a left side and a right side, you've made two columns, and now I'm going to read some statements, and based on these statements, you're going to put a hashtag or an X or a mark or some sort of other demarcation inside one of these columns. Okay, so on the left side, this is all about the left side of your paper, right? So get ready to start your tally for the left side, right, with these questions. So the first question is, or the first statement is, and if this is true of you, put a hashtag or a mark. First statement for the left side of your paper, you don't need to write the statement down, just mark it up. First statement is, I'm good at meeting industry people on my own. I'm good at meeting industry people on my own. So if that's true, put a mark on the left side of your paper. Next, I live in a market that is small enough for me to navigate. I live in a market as a writer that's small enough for me to navigate. So if that's true, put a mark on the left side of your sheet. If that's not true, just don't do anything. Next, I'm not ready to make writing my profession. If that's true, put a hash mark or a hashtag or some sort of mark on the left side of your paper. And next, I already know the people I need to know in order to ramp up my career. If that's true, put some sort of mark on the left side of your paper. Next, my career is in great shape and I'm where I want to be. If that's true in terms of your writing life, put a mark on the left side of your page. And finally, I have an advocate for my professional life already, and I'm happy with her. If that's true, put a mark on the left side of your page. So I'm going to read those again really quickly, and if any of those are true, for each one that's true, you're supposed to put a mark on the left side of your page. So they are, I'm good at meeting industry people on my own. I live in a market that's small enough for me to navigate. I'm not ready to make writing my profession. I already know the people I need to know in order to ramp up my career. My career is in great shape and I'm where I want to be. I have an advocate for my professional life already and I'm happy with her, right? So however many of those are true, put a mark on the left side of your page. Good, so far so good. Now we're going to go to the right side of your page and I'm going to read some other statements. And however many of those are true, you're going to put a mark on the right side of your page. So the first one is, get ready to start your tally, right side of the page now. First one is, I'm ready for the next professional step in my career. If that's true, put a mark on the right side of the page. Next, I've got ample material and training to do the work of a professional writer. If that's true, put a mark on the right side of the page. Next, I could use some help meeting industry people and I have no mechanism to do that now. If that's true, put a mark on the right side of your page. Next, I believe I bring skills to the table that are sharp and competitive as a writer. If that's true, put another mark on the right side of your page. Next, I'm willing to continue to work hard at my craft. If that's true, put a mark on the right side of your page. And last but not least, I live and want to work in a market that's a bit tricky to navigate professionally as a writer. If that's true, put a mark on the right side of your page. Okay, so once again, I'm going to read these statements quickly. Again, if any of these statements are true, for each one that's true, you're going to put a mark on the right side of your page. They are, I'm ready for the next professional step in my career. I've got ample material and training to do the work of a professional writer. I could use some help meeting industry people, and I have no mechanism to do that. Next, I believe my skills, the skills I bring to the table are sharp and competitive. After that, I'm willing to work hard at my craft. And last but not least, I live and work in a market that is a bit tricky to navigate professionally. Okay, all right, so you have some marks ideally on your the left-hand side of your page, and you have some other marks on the right-hand side of your page. So how many marks do you have on the left-hand side of your page? How many marks do you have on the right-hand side of your page? So here's the way this works. If you have more marks on the left side of your page, if more of those things were true on the left side of your page, then you may not need an agent. If you have more marks on the right side of your page, you may need one, right? Okay, so just take a look at what you have on the left and the right. And again, if you have more marks on the left side of your page, you may not need an agent. You might be fine with your career and the way things are going and what you need in the market you live in. It may be all fine and good. And if you have more marks on the right side of the page, you may need an agent. So now here's the bottom line in terms of this. Agents and managers are just one tool to get you where you need to be, just one tool. They may help move your career forward, but the main and definitive factor is you, of course, right? If you're motivated, if you're focused, and if you're in need of help to move through the industry, then an agent or a manager may be for you. Now, if you're motivated and focused, and you seem to have it all covered already through a lawyer, through family connections, through a family friend, or you live in a market that you can navigate easily by yourself, you know, like a smaller city, or, you know, or you're connected already, then, you know, you may not need an agent. Now, you know, what comes up for you? Here's the question. What comes up for you when you answer these questions in terms of what you may need and what you may not need? Like what emotionally emerges for you? And I ask that question because I always feel my feelings are really important for me to come to a decision around whatever it is I'm going to do professionally or personally. And so, you know, some of the time, I think many of us, and this is why I do these talks and calls, many of us feel really baffled by the notion of whatever the professional decisions might be in terms of our life and career. And I'm here to tell you that, you know, I believe that the barometer in terms of my emotional barometer around these things is often the same. So again, so how do you feel about the notion of either having representation or not having a representation? You know, where are you emotionally with that? It's a good thing to think about and to look at. And how does it resonate with you to consider this agent question in this way? So here's the truth of it. Now, without an agent, you know, you might need to keep churning stuff out. I mean, look, even with an agent, you need to keep churning stuff out, but you might need to churn stuff out more if, you know, actually with or without an agent. Let me back up here. Not what I meant to say. With or without an agent, and this is the space where it comes to, it's all about you. With or without an agent, you got to churn out material, more and more material. That's what it's all about. It's about you as a writer, right? It's not you as somebody who's written one thing and then can sit back and be like, yeah, well, I could rest on my laurels. It's about you generating material, whether you're represented or not, right? And so if you want to meet people and you can broker meeting people and getting people to read your material and you can do that yourself, then hey, then that may be the way to go without representation, right? But some people can't do that. I mean, there are all sorts of ins and outs of the kinds of people that I can meet, for example, with my agent and manager, the kind of meetings that I'm getting around town or in this industry in Hollywood where I live. Some of those things I can't really broker by myself, or I'm not able to at this moment. You know, that doesn't mean that that's the same for you. You might live in Topeka. You know, you might live in a smaller town. You might be pursuing theater rather than TV, or you might live in a big city and you might be very connected to the industry in a way that it doesn't make it necessary for you to have that kind of representation, right? But either way, it's really important that your material be good and fresh and that you continue to work on it. All right. So now that we've dealt with the question of whether or not you having an agent is a thing or should be a thing for you or not, let's talk about who agents and managers really are, right? Because I think we have this mystique around the whole notion of who they are. And first of all, they're people. Now that seems really obvious, but I think it's worth mentioning because basically, as I've said, agents can introduce you to people in the industry, right? But the rest is up to us. You know, agents are to a certain extent, people who can vouch for us, who can basically say, this guy's cool, or this guy, you know, might be worth looking at or might be worth talking to, right? But once they do that, that's it. Then the rest is up to you in terms of showing up, being present, representing yourself, representing your work. And that's the big thing that you need to do as a writer. Now, you know, all of that depends on talent, right? And being able to represent yourself also depends on how well you keep in touch with people in the industry, which is why keeping in touch is so important, right? But the power of the world is not in your agent's hands. And so many people think it is, like, oh, my agent can handle everything. And if I haven't had an agent, everything would be fantastic. That's not the way it works, right? Many people think it is. It's not. So they're just part of the landscape, right? They're just part of the machine. And, you know, it's been said, and I think it's really worth thinking about, that agents traditionally take 10% of what you make. So that means, if you think about it, that you are responsible for 90% of the work. They're only doing 10% of the work, right? So that sheds some light on how important or not important. It might be an important 10%, but it's only 10% of the work, right? And no matter what and who you work for, if you work with an agent, it's very important to remember that they work for you. You know, as somebody who takes 10% of your salary, they're essentially your employee. Right? Now, that I don't say that with any grandiosity or nastiness, but it's really important to think about. So now, let's say you want an agent or manager. You're not sure how to find one. Let's say you did decide that you do want one. So then what do? All right. I'm sure there are thoughts out there. And as a matter of fact, you know, there's a Q&A feature on this system. So if you are, you know, if you're watching, the Q&A feature is open. If you have questions, feel free to post some questions on that, and we will get to questions at the end. But here are a couple of ways to think about how you might connect with an agent. One, through a friend who knows the agent, right? You may have friends who are represented. You might talk to them about connecting with their agents, right? Maybe by submitting work, plays, theater, scripts, and doing well in, say, a contest or a competition. That's another way to get yourself an agent, potentially. Next is by connecting to an agent who you went to the same college or university with, right? Or who's from your hometown. Somebody who has something in common with you might be willing to look at your stuff and read your stuff. Or through approaching an agent directly, just doing a query and sending stuff out and saying, hey, what about this? What about me? Blah, blah, blah. Now, I have to say that of all of the things on that list, the last one, connecting to an agent directly, is probably the least likely to get you connected to an agent, probably because agents are swamped by people like you and me who are reaching out to them all the time. They're super busy. And in fact, as a matter of fact, my agent, who I work with, is sometimes so busy that I'm not able to get a hold of him, So just imagine if you don't know him at all, it's much harder to get a hold of agents because they're so super busy. So agents, what they do is they broker connections for us. That's what they can do, right? And they'll vouch for us as we meet with other people in the business. So, and think about it, agents need the same thing, right? I often use the example of this. This is really juicy to me. You're walking down the street and you get approached by a homeless person, right? So now whether you give money or whether you don't give money probably depends on how much money and time and patience and energy you have on a given day. The fact is that homeless person is a stranger to you, perfect stranger, right? And if it was somebody you knew, if the homeless person walked up and you were like, oh my God, we went to high school together, then it could be entirely different. So now, unfortunately, as far as any agent knows, if you respond to them, reach out to them directly, you're a homeless person. If they don't know you or know anything about you or know anybody you know in common or can vouch for you through a contest or anything else, you might as well be a homeless person, right? So without somebody to recommend you, which would be that friend or that contest or whatever, or the fact that you went to the same school, it becomes a little difficult and they decide that it may not be worth their time because they're swamped with stuff and people and requests and all of that. And that's a reason why this whole notion is so important of making sure and connecting with somebody, who is a mutual friend, all of that, right? And that allows them to prioritize a meeting with you in a way that they may not ordinarily do. So let's say you get through, you found a way to connect with an agent, right? Let's talk about, and I do see this question, and I'm gonna get to that in a moment, but I'm gonna keep going at the moment. I'm gonna say, let's say you found a way to connect with an agent, and you're gonna have a meeting. What do? Right? And in that instance, I think it's all about preparation, right? It's all about preparation. So for every kind of meeting, there's gonna be a certain amount of research and that sort of thing to do beforehand, certain amount of prep. So here are a few things that you want to do prior to meeting with an agent. Research the company, research the agent, right? Look for both on Twitter, on Facebook, as well as Google. You might have mutual friends as the agent, right? And the goal of that is to really get clear with yourself around what you want from this agent or manager. Right? It's designed to allow you to step into a meeting like it's a job interview and you're the employer, because essentially that's what's going on, right? So prior to meeting with an agent, you want to think about, what am I looking for in an agent or manager? That's a good question, right? When you decide what that is, you can ask them for it. You can also talk about how often do you communicate with people and how much do you get people, how often are you sending people out and how many other people like me do you represent, other writers like me or other people who do the kind of work that I do. You might ask them, you might decide for yourself if you have preferences about who you want to be assigned to you. You may want, and be honest with yourself as you brainstorm about this, you may want an agent who has a certain age or is a certain race or is a certain sex or has a certain background. I think that's perfectly legitimate if it's your part of your shopping list for the kind of employee you want in an agent. Also, what would you like your personal and professional interactions to be like? Do you want an agent who's going to pick up the phone? Do you want an agent who you can talk to? Do you want somebody who you can navigate with really well? Some people don't care about that. Obviously, your agent is not necessarily going to be your friend, but there are certain opportunities or certain ideas that you can say, what, I really want somebody I can talk to. I really want somebody who I'm not going to be afraid to pick up the phone because they're so blustery or whatever. right? So that's a really important thing to know as you look for an agent. Here's another question for you. What kind of material do you have to show? How many pieces do you have that are ready to go, right? And last, what questions do you have for this person or this company that might represent you? You know, what do you want to ask them about? Something you've read about in the trades, something you want to know about your career, something you want to know about what they think or what they might be able to do. All of those questions are super important, right? And who are the writers that you respect? And those writers who you respect, who are they represented by? Now, this is a really important piece. And I want to say for the record that if you pay whatever amount of money it is to join IMDb Pro, it's pretty, you know, I think it's a pretty affordable investment. Every person who shows up on IMDb Pro, in the Pro version, their representation is listed on the left-hand side. So it's a really great thing to say, oh, I love this writer who represents him, or I love this actor who represents him or her, right? And that's a great way for you to begin to do the research of looking toward a representative. Now, a few more things, and then I'm going to get to questions. Here's the thing to know. If you're going to meet with an agent, you're probably going to be sitting across from a table or a couch, facing several people and talking about yourself, your work, your life, all of that. So it's really important, and we're not going to talk about this today, but it is really important to figure out how it is that you talk about yourself. In one of my previous creative expression sessions, we talked about how to take a meeting. It's essentially the same kind of energy. Like, what am I going to bring to the table to say about me? Rather than fumbling and, you know, what's my story? What's my writer's story? What's my story as a person? What's my story as a writer? What's my story as a professional? What can I bring? How can I speak about myself? Because that's going to be what happens in this kind of interview, in this kind of experience. So you need to be ready, prepared to talk in the moment about who you are in a way that is engaging and fun and relaxed and open-hearted. And so you might, you know, you might figure that out. You might practice that. And, you know, and ultimately you will also get a chance to ask them questions about who they are and about their work. So you need to be prepared to go into that kind of conversational mode, almost like, I like to say, the same kind of thing that you see on David Letterman or one of the talk shows. You need to be able to go in and have that kind of relaxed but informative conversation with whoever you meet with, you know, as a potential agent or manager, just like any job interview, right? Yeah, so it's important that you're comfortable with who you are and what your story is. And it's important also to know, without ego or grandiosity, that in this arrangement, if you connect with them, you're the main attraction, right? It's up to your talent, your effort, your creativity, and your hard work, right? And so I invite you to breathe that in for a second. And certainly in the future, we can talk more about that in another creative expression session. But the deal is, this is why it's really important to continue generating work, even if you're with somebody, because you want to be able to say to your agent, hey, I'm now working on this. This is cool. Oh, and I'm working on this. That's so cool too. Oh, and I want you to know, right? The more you make the opportunity, the more you say, like, look at this cool stuff I'm doing, even the people that represent you, the more excited they're going to be as they go forth and speak about you and try to get you meetings and all of that stuff, right? And without that, if you're sitting there going, well, I've done my work, it's over, you just need to sell it, it's going to be a little bit harder, right? Because many of the people they represent are getting back to them and saying, I'm doing this now, I'm doing that now, right? So to create your own whatever, to create your own web series, to create a short play, to enter a contest, to be able to say, I'm doing all these things, is a great enticement in some ways for your agent to step up and to do more for you in the process of helping you out with your career. Okay, so let's go to some questions around agents and meeting with agents. And here's a question actually from Will. And his question is, suppose I do well in a contest or even sell a script, but no recognition from agents is forthcoming. How do I let agents know about my success effectively? So it's a great question, Will. Thank you for that. And I think, you know, this sort of goes into the space of marketing. How can you reach out, right? Is there a way, for example, that you can create a flyer that speaks of what you're doing? Is there a way that you can send out a newsletter to people who know you and ask them to help connect you to agents and say, hey, I just won this contest, and can I connect to your agent? Or I just won this contest, would you be willing to talk to your people? Or to post it on Facebook? Or, I've actually gotten, in my own personal Facebook world, there's a Your Creative Life Facebook account as well. But in my own personal Facebook world, if I post something about something I've done, chances are some of my Facebook friends may reach out to me about opportunities, about workshops that I might do, or people who are looking for so-and-so, or have you met this director, or that sort of thing. So I think there may be a marketing campaign in your future, like a way to become really specific about how it is you reach out, whether it's by postcard, whether it's by letter, whether it's a newsletter or an e-blast, whether it's on your Facebook page or Twitter or some other social media. I'm sure there's some way. And again, if we were talking, perhaps we'd have some sort of better opportunity to brainstorm, but there's some way to advertise. I mean, think about it. Think about the ways that people campaign for the Oscars and or celebrate after they've received the Oscar. And so there's an ad in the trades, and then there's an ad after the trades. And, it's like whatever you can do to ingeniously let people know. I think it's a great opportunity. The other thing is, this goes back to the notion of keeping in touch, which I talk about all the time. Once you've won a contest, I'd reach out to all my friends and be like, all my industry friends and my other friends, and be like, hey, I won this contest. Like, how cool is that? I'm so proud, I'm so excited, and then allow them to help you. If somebody emails back and says, that's so great, you might email them and say, any other ideas about how I might get the word out? Any ideas about how I might reach an agent? That sort of thing I think is really important. I also think once you have this piece of recognition, this contest, then I think you can, with that contest thing, that might be an opportunity to do some sort of direct query to an agent and be able to say, hey, I just won this contest and I'm really excited about it, and I write this kind of thing, and I'm this sort of person, and I'd love to meet with you or somebody at your agency, and begin to see whether that, with the recognition of the award itself, might tip the tides or shift the ground in terms of getting people to meet with you. It's a great question, Will. Thanks. All right. Any other questions out there? I always sort of write out some questions myself in case people don't respond with questions. So here's a question that I thought you might ask, and that is, what's the difference between a manager and an agent? So let me hit that one. So a manager, well, let me start with the agents. Agents are basically licensed. They're licensed by the state, they deal with the unions, and they can only charge a certain amount, which basically is 10%. So if you're working with an agent, whoever they are, big agent, small agent, they can only take 10% of what you make. Managers are not licensed. And the difference between an agent and manager is, well, one of the differences is that agents often tend to wear suits and are a little more, a little stuffier, maybe a little more upscale seeming. Managers are much more sort of relaxed and casual. The manager tends to deal with more of the life of the artist. So the manager might be the person who is more into, if you're an actor, the manager might be the person who recommends a nutritionist or a gym or a, sort of more life stuff that feeds into the career, or that advises you a little bit more as a writer, sort of background about things, when the agent might just set the appointment and negotiate contracts. So the manager is a little bit more hands-on. And managers, because they're not licensed, can charge more than 10%. So some managers, depending on who they are, charge 15%, right? So it really depends on you, who you want to work with, and try to figure that out. But managers are unlicensed and can charge any percentage, and agents specifically 10%. All right, so that's all about agents and managers, and I hope it's been helpful to you. You can always ask me more questions by emailing me at coachsteve@yourcreativelife.com. Again, this is the Creative Expression Session. I do this just about every couple of weeks with another question and another place to sort of dive in depth. I also do these question of the week things that are also very short and are on my YouTube page, so you can check those out. And if there are questions that you want answered, feel free to ask me, email me, and I'll do something in the future that's specifically about those things. So you can find more information on yourcreativelife.com, articles, blog posts, video, and other information, and all about coaching as well. And I wish you the happiest, most productive, most beautiful and energized opportunity to increase and promote your writing life going forward. So thanks for joining us, and keep those questions coming, and good luck with your own writing life.